To Lagos, Tobi Adewale and Amara Adewale looked like proof that hard work still births fairy tales. He was a boy from a two-room Surreal flat who built Tobalink Systems, the logistics platform oil firms and e-commerce companies used to track shipments in real time. She was a nurse whose gentle hands and steady eyes had calmed entire wards at St. Jude's Hospital since internship. Their pre-wedding photos were still pinned on blogs, golden hour shots on Taco Bay, silk flowing in sea wind, his forehead on hers like a vow. Their Banana Island home, all glass and quiet water, felt like a reward from God, but even palaces are corners where dust settles. Three things shifted the ground beneath them long before Tobi noticed: success, silence, and spectators. Success came first. Contracts so large even his accountant spoke in whispers. Meetings where his signature felt like rainfall over a dry farm. Then silence. He began taking calls with AirPods still in, mind split between Amara's voice and dashboards blinking on his phone. And spectators. Friends who mistook cynicism for wisdom, who laughed at faithfulness as though it were discarded fashion. At a lounge in Ikoyi, leather soft as secrets, his friend Femi sipped whiskey and said in a tone designed to bruise, "My guy, love ain't a theory. If you want to know a woman's heart, remove the comfort we cover. The test is small." Laughter ricocheted around the table. Tobi laughed too. Social laughter, the kind that doesn't belong to you. But that sentence followed him home like perfume on his shirt. Amara met him at the door in scrubs, tie tucked behind a collar, hair pinned in a bun. She smelled of antiseptic and hibiscus tea. "You're late," she said, not accusing, only tired. "Baby in ICU, we stabilize him." He wanted to tell her about a potential expansion into East Africa, about investors courting him like kings court prophets. Instead, he stared at her hands, the small cut near her knuckle, the dry skin from sanitizer. She had spent her life pouring herself out. Had he begun to hoard? At dinner, ate usually with correct lumps, fish fried crisp. She described a patient who'd lost a mother, and how she sang a lullaby until the boys slept. Tobi listened, nodding on time. But the lounge words kept circling. Test her. Remove comfort. He hated that they lived rent-free and his mind rent-free. That night, while she showered, Amara's phone lit up on the dresser. Morning rounds moved to 6 a.m. Thanks for covering. Desmond. A colleague. Logical. Innocent. Yet suspicion isn't logical. It is arriving whether you believe in it or not. He didn't touch the phone. He didn't need to. The name alone became a splinter. Amara crawled into bed, damn hair loose on his chest. "Wake me at 5, she murmured. He held her, counted her breaths, wondered why a man with everything could feel empty while a tired nurse filled the world. The next Sunday they sat at their church's second service. The pastor's text was from Corinthians, love being patient and kind and not keeping score. Tobi nodded, amen at the right times, but his heart was doing math. What if love that never faced a storm wasn't love at all? What if everyone else knew something he didn't? Late afternoon, he scrolled his explore page. Other couples vacationed, toasted, performed. Performance is contagious. He thought about what looked like love and what was actually love. He thought about the line between protecting your heart and policing someone else's. When Amara fell asleep during a movie, phone buzzing against the throw pillow, he turned the volume down and watched her instead. She had the peace of people who choose their calling daily. He envied her steadiness. He feared her power. He feared that if the world stripped everything from him, she might choose a man with less storm in his chest. He feared what he couldn't control. He did not know it yet, but fear, unaddressed, always asked for proof. And proof, in the hands of fear, always looks like a trap. Outside, lecky rain started, soft at first, then fat and insistent. In the hush, between the wiper-like rhythm on the windows and the hum of the fridge, Tobi stared at the ceiling and entertained his first treasonous thought. What if I test what we have? He turned the TV off. The room sighed into darkness. Somewhere far out, the lagoon wore the moon like a scarf. Amara's hand slid across the sheet until it found his. He held it, too tight, as if love were a kite in wind, not trust, kept it aloft. He slept, eventually, in the shallow way men sleep when they are about to break something they didn't build alone. It began with a perfectly ordinary day. That's how most storms disguise themselves, like errands. Amara woke at 5, wrapped a scarf, left a note, pap in the flask. Back by 7 p.m., don't forget your vitamins, Chief. She had always called him Chief, half tease, half crown. He smiled, pocketed the word, and went to breakfast with an investor who believed Africa's supply chain could be read like poetry if you had the right software. The numbers sang. By noon, he had made enough promises to build a second headquarters. At 2, his cousin Cunnel arrived, Cunnel of the crisp fades and quick schemes, the relative who knew how to extract fun from any budget and trouble from any calm. They ate suya on the terrace while gulls looped over the water. Cunnel talked about a side hustle flipping cars. Tobi talked about API integrations. Neither heard the other fully. Then Cunnel spotted Amara's framed license on the shelf and grinned. "Nurse, madam, is the night shift still steady?" Tobi nodded. "Lucky guy. Me. I don't fit to marry a nurse. Too many doctors around. Women go say to a colleague, but you go wise up later." He said it like a joke. Jokes are delivery systems for poison you don't want to admit you're drinking. Tobi changed the subject. Cunnel returned to it like a fly returns to sweet things. "Guy, you are a businessman. You know human nature. Verify. No be so?" Verify. That word felt noble. He used it daily with code. Why not with love? That evening, while Amara cooked, her phone chimed on the counter. Tobi, at the sink washing plates, so the preview flash. "Desmond, thanks for yesterday. You were a rock." He rinsed the bowl like it had wronged him. "Who is Desmond?" he asked, too casual to be casual. Amara blinked, then laughed. "Dr. Desmond. Internal medicine. We covered a nasty shift together. His dramatic, ignore him." She turned to stir the pot, humming. That should have ended it. But doubt, once planted, demands sunlight. It seeks it in every coincidence. He began clocking her arrivals without meaning to. 7:18 p.m., 7:52 p.m., 8:10 p.m. He told himself nurses can't control emergencies. He nodded, agreed, and still took mental notes like a clock. He noticed the way she guarded patient privacy, which he had once admired as integrity, and now mistook for secrecy. He noticed how she smiled at her phone the same way she smiled at the ward's new incubator. Fondness misread as flirtation, pride misread as plotting. 2 nights later, Femi added fuel. Group chat notifications stacked, men performing boldness. If she's truly yours, the test is small. Ego strengthen your mind. Tobi typed a laughing emoji, then muted the chat before his heart could protest. He dreamt of glass, rooms of glass, floors of glass, shoes tapping, eyes everywhere. In the dream, Amara walked through a corridor and didn't see him. He pounded on the glass. She kept walking. The next day, as if ordained by pettiness, he bumped into Dr. Desmond in the hospital lobby while delivering lunch to Amara. Desmond was handsome in the clean, unthreatening way that makes people confess secrets. "You're Tobi," he said warmly. "She talks about you like Lagos talks about rain. Inevitable, necessary." It should have calmed him. It did not. Compliments from a rival sound like maps to invasion. On the drive home, he called Cunnel. Hypothetically, he asked, how would one test loyalty without causing war? Cunnel laughed like a drumline. Hypothetically, fake crisis, money dries, health shakes. Then you know who will deny your side. Once a plan enters a bloodstream, it looks for arteries. Cunnel became an artery. They met in a quiet corner of a Victoria Island cafe, rain pressing Lagos flat. Cunnel brought a friend of a friend, a mercenary nurse who knew another doctor who could stage diagnoses. Money made introductions. Tobi's chest boned, shame tugging at him like a child at a sleeve, but pride patted the child's head and said, "Not now." They mapped it like a heist, location, curved near 3rd Mainland where skids look believable. Timing, late, after drizzle, when roads are all slick and sirens sound plausible. Cast, hired doctor to deliver the script, driver tried to phone Amara. Fake MRI print source from a technician who owed Cunnel a favor. Goal, 3 to 6 weeks of paralysis observation. "You no go last past 2, Cunnel joked. "If she is an angel, you will confess quickly." 2 nights later, Lagos obliged with the weather. The bridge wore mist like a veil. Tobi sat in the passenger seat, face pale with a fear that for once had an honest soul. He was about to injure trust in a way that would limp forever, even after apology. But he had built a life by acting decisively under pressure. He mistook that muscle for wisdom here. Chike accelerated. Brakes feathered to the agreed spot. Tires hiss. Car kissed a barrier with a crunch orchestrated to sound worse than it was. Airbags bloomed like violent flowers. Tobi let his head loll, eyes half-lidded, breath shallow. Pain wasn't in his body. It was in the image of Amara running toward him in his mind. He already hated the look he was about to cause on her face. At St. Jude's, Connell's doctor delivered lines with theater school zeal. Suspected spinal trauma. Possible permanent loss of function. Amara arrived mid-sentence, hair escaping its tie, mouth askew, voice already breaking. No, no, no? Tobi, baby, open your eyes. He didn't. On cue, he felt her palm on his cheek, the kiss through a mask, the prayer under breath. He felt filthier than the roadside puddle that had licked his shoes. They admitted him. Tests the fake doctor ordered were real enough to confuse the system. Results the man printed were false enough to imprison a heart. We'll manage the pain, but the prognosis is guarded. The doctor said somberly. Amara, nurse brain fighting wife heart, nodded like professional and collapsed like a woman. Night gathered at hospital noises, gloves snapping, wheels squeaking, oxygen sighing. Amara dozed in the orange recliner, feet swollen in rubber clogs, head tilted at an angle that would hurt tomorrow. Tobi watched her through his lashes, then closed them because seeing mercy while lying feels like drowning in blessed water. Connell visited the next day with a smirk he mistook for support. You day see 'em, he whispered in the corner. If she go run, she will show signs. Tobi didn't answer. He was learning something he had refused to study. When you turn love into an audition, you become the one not qualified for the part. Meanwhile, logistics continued in the background. A small pinhole camera, installed early in a corner under a maintenance pretext, fed footage of Connell's tablet. Amara sponging Tobi's forehead. Amara massaging feet that did not need it. Amara refusing to go home despite nurses promising to text if anything changed. The third night, she sold her gold bracelet, the one her late mother had given her, quietly, to settle a bill insurance claim that would take weeks. Tobi saw the receipt later, because Connell waved it like a trophy. Guy, see love-o, but the test never finishes. Tobi barely held down bile. At dawn, Amara placed her head on the bed beside his hand and whispered a vow not meant for cameras. Even if this chair becomes our forever, you won't sit in it alone. Tobi's eyes stung. He wanted to rip the cannula out and confess. Pride tightened the tape. If you listen carefully in hospitals, you learn that machines aren't the only things that beep. Conscience beeps too, soft, insistent. He turned up the volume in his fear to drown it out. The plan was working. Which is to say, the plan was failing spectacularly. Routine arrived carrying metal trays and mercy. Mornings, vitals, bed bath, quiet joke with a cleaner who called everyone my day. Afternoons, Amara coaxing him into physiotherapy moves he pretended to hate, adjusting pillows, rubbing shea butter into calves that didn't require the care but received it like benediction. Nights, psalms whispered like lullabies, her thumb tracing circles on his wrist until both their pulses agreed to calm down. He learned the weight of her sacrifices in receipts she had poorly, pawn slips for jewelry, transfers to a cousin for emergency dog-sitting because she wouldn't leave Tobi longer than 30 minutes, a cancelled hair appointment she had booked months ago for a colleague's wedding. Love is a ledger if you force it, but when it is free it refuses to keep score. Still, the marks accumulate somewhere, on the body, in the breath. Nurses gossiped. Hospitals run on science and stories. Fine nurses like that go waste with man we no fit walk. One asked in Yoruba near the supply closet, not cruel, simply resigned to the economy of youth and options. Amara's voice, tired but steely, floated back. Love is not a job with benefits. It's a covenant. The other nurse muttered an apology. Tobi, in the room with the door ajar, swallowed something hard and bitter that refused to go down. His reflection. In private, his guilt sharpened. In public, by which he meant in front of the camera's invisible stare, he performed stoic, as if he were the brave one. Nothing is more exhausting than being applauded for a wound you drew in ink. On the fifth night, power flickered. Backup hummed. Rain found a path along the window's rubber seal and stitched a line of water down to the sill. Amara stood and placed a spare towel there, the way she managed 1,000 tiny crises without ceremony. Then she returned to her spot, leaned over him, and prayed a prayer with no fancy chords. God, keep my husband's mind. Keep my own. Don't let this become the end of us. He almost broke then. He almost said the words that would ruin the world. But Cunnell texted, Hold, a small test still remains. Tomorrow we will go see something. The phone screen lit his face ghostly blue. Amara, catching that hue from the corner of her eye, smiled. Who's texting you at midnight? He lied with a gentle tone, the worst kind. Work. Later, when she thought he was asleep, she removed her wedding band and cleaned it with a corner of her t-shirt, held it between finger and thumb, and whispered, We are more than this moment. She slid it back on, kissed it, and rested. The camera saw. The camera did not understand. Before dawn, Tobi woke to her crying silently, shoulders shaking in careful waves so as not to wake him. Tears have a sound when the body tries to hide them, like fabric wrung in a basin. He watched darkness outline her, wanted to be the one to stop the shaking, and realized he was the one who started it. When morning bleached the room, she was composed again, brisk, kind, efficient. People who carry others know how to store their storms. She teased him about his scowl, called him chief softly, fed him pap he hated and swallowed anyway. By noon, the fake doctor returned with a face arranged for tragedy. We fear there may be no improvement. Amara squeezed Tobi's hand. He pretended to be the one needing comfort. When she stepped out, Cunnell slid in with a conspirator's grin. Time for temptation, he announced, as if unveiling a birthday cake. I done called Desmond. E go come console him small, we go gauge her heart. Temptation, imported like a foreign good into a local market, always misunderstands the price of things. Comma. Dr. Desmond walked into the ward the next morning with a clipboard and the careful step of men who don't want to step on landmines. He wore blue scrubs and a face that said, I'm here to help and leave. He examined Tobi with the professionalism of a man who knows eyes are on him. He didn't flirt. He didn't overstay. He said, Mrs. Adewale, you're carrying the weight of two people. Please remember to breathe. It was the kind of kindness that makes suspicion feel stupid. But Cunnell didn't want kindness. He wanted content. He trimmed clips on his tablet to bend narratives. Desmond's hand briefly touching Amara's elbow as he reached for a chart became a caress. Amara's smile at a bad joke became a glowing interest. He angled the secret camera, sent Tobi a montage designed to ignite men who think jealousy proves love. You see, he hissed. N.A. small time remain. Tobi watched, by returning. The footage was suggestive the way edited memory is suggestive. He stared at the ceiling until its constellations of pinprick holes swam. He imagined confronting Amara and imagined how her face would crumple at the accusation, and he shrank from being a man who calls that collapse twice. So he chose a third road that led nowhere, coldness. He answered her warmth with monosyllables, weaponized silence, let his eyes go dull where they had once gone tender. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Love reads what mouths deny. Desmond, sensing the way his presence was being used, cornered Cunnell in a side corridor that smelled of bleach and mango soap. I'm a doctor, he said through clenched teeth. Not your actor. End this. Cunnell laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't reach pupils. Oga doctor, relax. We day write a love story. Desmond's jaw hardened. This is cruelty. She will break. He didn't return to the ward after that. By the fourth week, Amara moved like a woman underwater, slow, graceful, carrying invisible weight. She still bathed Tobi, still combed his hair with gentle fingers, still texted his mother every evening with updates he didn't deserve. But when she thought no one was looking, she stared at the window like someone studying escape routes. That night, rain shook the city awake again. She stood by the glass, forehead pressed a cool pain, Lagos a smear of lights beyond. I miss you, she whispered. Tobi's heart leapt. Then she added, you who laugh with his whole body, you who didn't live with a secret. He felt the sentence was like a verdict. A few hours before dawn, a prayer call rose faint from a distant mosque, stitched to the chorus of frogs fat on rain. Amara sat, took his hand, and let tears come without hiding them this time. God, she said, voice steady and it breaking. "If this is my assignment, I will do it. But give me the truth. I can carry pain. I cannot carry lies I cannot name." In the morning, she caught a detail the camera had missed, a billing discrepancy that didn't make sense, a wristband number that didn't match the system, a doctor who mispronounced a drug name no one in the ward would ever mispronounce. Her nose brain sharpened. She asked quiet questions with a smile that made people underestimate the sharpness. Answers stuttered. Footprints appeared where men thought they had walked on air. Rain stalked Lagos again, fat drops smearing headlights into ghosts. Inside St. Jude's, the corridors hummed with a midnight rhythm only hospitals know, metal wheels squeaking, distant coughs, nurses whispering coded instructions. In Tobi Adewale's ward, fluorescent light bled a thin blue across the tiled floor. Amara sat beside his bed, head bowed over clasped hands. Her scrubs were 2 shifts old, and her spirit older. "Lord," she whispered, "if this chair is ours forever, teach me to love him through it." Her voice trembled but did not break. Tobi lay still, pretending to sleep, yet every syllable pierced. Shame sat heavier than the blanket on his legs. He wanted to tell her the truth, to scream it, but cowardice came disguised as strategy. Not yet. A nurse entered, murmured, "His stable," and left. Amara wiped her eyes and smiled the brittle smile of women who have decided to keep going. When she turned toward the window, the neon reflection showed her tears before she felt them. Out in the corridor, 2 junior nurses gossiped in Yoruba. "Fine woman like that," one said, "and she goes waist with man we no fit walk." "E go tire small. She go move on," the other replied. Amara stepped out quietly. "Here's my husband, not my burden," she said. They lowered their eyes. Back inside, Tobi had heard. The words move on loop through his chest. He studied her as she straightened the foreline, wondered what kind of faith keeps a person here. By 3 a.m., she had fallen asleep in the recliner, arms folded, head tilted. The storm outside eased, leaving a soft percussion of water from the roof. He whispered into the dark, "I don't deserve you," and for the first time in months, meant it. Morning brought its ordinary disguises, breakfast trays, medication rounds, the smell of Dettol and boiled yam. Amara moved efficiently, yet tiny dissonances began to hum around her. The fake doctor fumbled medical jargon she knew by muscle memory. The billing sheet listed scans she never saw performed. Even the printed diagnosis used an outdated format. Her nurse's intuition tugged at loose threads. That evening she followed Connell's car from the hospital parking lot, hood up against drizzle. He stopped at a cheap bar in Yaba, the kind where gossip fermented faster than beer. From a nearby table, hidden by her face mask, she listened. "The Mew Mew still believes. Say Olga cripple," Connell boasted into his phone. "We will soon know if Madam is pure." Her stomach clenched, the room tilted. She stayed long enough to hear him discuss the hidden camera feed, the payments, the stage prognosis. Then she walked out before her rage became a spectacle. Back home she packed slowly, deliberate like a nurse preparing an injection. Her body moved on autopilot while her mind replayed every moment of devotion she'd offered to a lie. She stopped at the vanity mirror, stared at the woman inside. "He didn't test me," she murmured. "He tested himself, and failed." When she returned to the hospital that night, she performed her duties perfectly. No tremor in her hands, no crack in her tone. But when she looked at him, her eyes were new, clear, distant, merciful. Dawn filtered through the blinds, turning the room pale gold. Tobi woke to find Amara folding his clothes with mechanical precision. Her silence unnerved him more than anger would have. "You're quiet," he ventured. She smiled without warmth. "Rest is good for you." He noticed her wedding ring missing. Before he could ask, she placed an envelope on the bedside table and kissed his forehead. "You'll need strength for recovery," she said softly. When she left, the echo of her footsteps was a verdict. He reached for the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside lay a single sheet. "You wanted to test love. You failed the test of trust. May you heal from the disease of suspicion." By the time Connell arrived with breakfast, the recliner was empty, her uniforms gone. "She done run?" Connell said, half laughing. Tobi's silence made the room heavier than lead. He tore off the foreline, swung his legs off the bed, and tried to stand. Pain shot through him, hot and bright, but he forced himself upright, proof of his own deceit. Then he collapsed. Nurses rushed in, confusion scattering like birds. That evening he fired Connell, fired everyone, and shut himself inside the mansion. Her absence echoed through every corridor louder than any voice. For 2 days he neither ate nor slept. Then came the phone call that would make irony a living god. It was Chaik, the driver. His voice trembled. Olga, small accident, though. The car skidded because of the rain. I'm in the ER now. Toby grabbed his keys, forgot his weakness, and drove out into the downpour. Guild had become an engine. The wipers couldn't keep up. Traffic lights blurred into comets. God, please, let her be safe, he muttered, though he didn't know why he thought prayer was still his to use. He sped toward the hospital, memories flooding the car. The first time he saw Amara balancing medical textbooks at Unileg, her laughter echoing in a hallway, the scent of roasted plantain after night duty. He blinked hard, and in that split second, the car hydroplaned. Tires shrieked. The guardrail caught him like an iron jaw. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world spun and went black. Rain hissed over wreckage. Sirens wailed somewhere distant. When he opened his eyes again, light hurt. A ceiling rolled above him. Pain arrived from every direction, sharp, organized. Mr. Adewale, can you hear me? A voice asked. He tried to answer, but his tongue was thick. A nurse's silhouette hovered. Dark skin, quick movements, unfamiliar. Severe spinal trauma, the doctor said to someone else. We'll transfer him to St. Jude's for neurosurgical review. The words fell like prophecy. Reality came back in slices. The antiseptic sting, the slow beeping monitor, the heavy weight of legs that would not obey. Toby blinked. So the logo on the nurse's scrubs, St. Jude's Hospital, and nearly laughed at the cosmic cruelty. Not again, he whispered. When the door opened, he expected any face but Hayes. Yet there was Amara, framed by corridor light, clipboard in hand, eyes unreadable. Time stopped, bowed, and resumed. You're awake, she said evenly. He swallowed. You came back. I work here, she replied. They needed staff for your case. I volunteered. Why? She adjusted his fall without meeting his gaze. No one deserves to suffer alone. He tried to speak, but emotion strangled language. Amara, Rest, she interrupted gently. Healing requires silence. Her professionalism was a fortress. She recorded vitals, noted his pulse, repositioned his pillow. He watched, equal parts gratitude and agony. Every gesture reminded him of grace he hadn't owned. When she turned to leave, he said quietly, You should hate me. She paused at the door. Hatred is heavy, she said. I choose light things now. Then she walked out. He lay staring at the ceiling tiles until tears blurred their grid. Somewhere down the hall, a patient laughed. Life, unbothered, went on. That night, alone in the dim hum of machines, he whispered the truth into the dark for the first time. I tested love and lost everything real. The monitor beeped, steady and cruel, like time refusing to sympathize. Outside, the rain that had started his charade drummed softly against the window, a sound that once hid his lies and now baptized his remorse. Pain had a rhythm. The soft beeping monitor became Toby's metronome for regret. Every second ticked louder, reminding him that he was no longer pretending. The paralysis was real this time, a cool mirror of his lie. He had wanted to test love, and now life was testing him. That morning, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and hope. Curtains fluttered under the ceiling fan. Toby's head throbbed from sleeplessness and morphine. His mind replayed the accident, the spin, the scream, the silence that followed. Then came the loneliness. Days without her voice were punishment enough. When the door opened, he didn't look immediately. He had stopped expecting mercy. But then a familiar scent, vanilla lotion and faint lavender, filled the room. He turned and froze. Standing in the doorway, holding a chart, was Amara. For a few seconds, he thought he was dreaming. Her white nurse uniform hugged her like grace itself. The same woman he had betrayed now stood before him again, calm, collected, unreadable. His breath caught. Amara. She didn't smile. Good morning, Mr. Adewale. Time for your vitals. Mr. Adewale. He almost laughed through the pain. Since when did I become a stranger? She approached, professional as a soldier, checking his pulse. Since trust died, she replied softly. The silence that followed was heavier than machinery hum. She moved with practiced grace, noting readings, adjusting the full, refusing eye contact. I didn't expect you, he said finally. I volunteered for this ward, she answered. When I heard your name, I didn't refuse. Not because of you, but because I refused to let pain decide who I am. That sentence struck harder than any slap. He wanted to apologize, to fall on his knees, to beg. But the irony stung. The same leg he once lied about couldn't move. So he swallowed his shame. She turned to leave. Amara, please. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. Don't speak, Tobi. Healing and talking can't share the same room. She walked out. That night, Tobi wept quietly into his pillow. His tears weren't for his legs. They were for every moment he'd chosen ego over truth. Weeks crawled by. The world outside his window lived as if nothing had changed. Cars honked, clouds gathered, Lagos hustled. Inside, Tobi was learning what humility truly meant. Physiotherapy started. Each session was agony, slow, humiliating, humbling. Muscles screamed, bones trembled. But he no longer cursed fate. He whispered prayers instead. Amara supervised sometimes, calm and firm. She rarely spoke beyond instructions. Left leg, Mr. Adewale. Again. Her tone carried no emotion. Not hate, not care, just duty. That neutrality hurt most of all. One afternoon, he tried to lift himself off the bed alone. His body refused. Sweat drenched his shirt. Amara rushed in, alarmed. Stop. You'll hurt yourself. He gritted his teeth. No, I need to stand on my own. For once. She hesitated, then steadied him from behind. His arms shook like twigs. 4 or 5 seconds. He stood, trembling, crying, alive. Then he fell back into the chair. She caught him gently. Her voice softened. You'll get there. That night, he couldn't sleep. The image of her helping him lingered like incense. He reached for his phone, opened his camera, and began recording. His voice was raw, unfiltered. My name is Tobi Adewale. I'm the man who faked paralysis to test his wife's loyalty. She passed the test, but I failed love. I destroyed trust because I feared losing it. This is my apology, not just to her, but to every woman who's been tested by fear disguised as love. He paused, wiped his tears, and whispered, If you're watching, Amara, I don't deserve you, but I'll spend the rest of my life owning the right to say your name. He posted it. Slept. By morning, the video had gone viral. Millions of views. Comment sections flooded with heartbreak and hope. He confessed, this is real repentance. I cried watching this. Where's the wife? She's a queen. Even Amara saw it. She didn't comment, but her hands trembled as she watched. For the first time in months, she whispered his name without anger. The hospital corridors buzzed with whispers. Journalists camped outside. Social media couldn't stop talking. The billionaire who tested his wife's faithfulness. Every blog headline screamed it. Tobi's room became both shrine and prison. Flowers arrived daily. Messages flooded his inbox. But none of it mattered until the day the hospital's PR head walked in and said, Sir, the board wants you to address the public to clear rumors. He nodded. I will. The press conference was held in the main hall. Reporters filled every seat. Cameras clicked. Amara entered quietly, blending with staff, arms folded. Tobi wheeled himself to the podium. His voice trembled at first. I used to think control meant strength. But real strength, he said, glancing toward Amara, is admitting you were wrong. He took a deep breath. I faked an accident to test my wife's faithfulness. She stayed loyal through every lie, every humiliation. And when she discovered the truth, she didn't expose me. She walked away quietly, When I had a real accident, she came back to care for me. That's love. That's grace. The crowd went silent. I'm not sharing this for fame, he continued. I'm sharing it because there are men watching this right now who are poisoning their own marriages with fear and pride. Stop. Stop testing people who have already proven their hearts. He looked at Amara. If you're willing, I'd like to apologize here, publicly. Amara stood slowly, eyes shining. The audience turned. Tobi, she said, voice steady, I forgave you long before you asked. But forgiveness doesn't erase memory. It teaches. Then she smiled faintly. Thank you for finally learning. The whole erupted into applause. Some reporters wiped their eyes. The clip hit the internet within hours, crossing 10 million views overnight. People called it a confession that restored faith in love. 2 weeks after the conference, something extraordinary happened. It was a quiet night. The ward smelled of rain. Amara was making her final rounds when she heard shouting from Tobi's room. She ran in, alarmed. Tobi, what's wrong? He was crying, but smiling. Amara, I felt it. What? My legs. I can feel them. She blinked, shocked. Are you sure? He nodded rapidly. Look, touch my toes. She pressed lightly, and he gasped. He felt it. After months of numbness, sensation had returned. The doctors rushed in, ran tests, scanned his spine. The results left them speechless. This shouldn't be possible, one muttered. The nerves are regenerating. Tobi whispered, It's grace. It's how. That night, he asked to be taken to the hospital chapel. Amara wheeled him there. Candles flickered around a wooden cross. He clasped her hand. I don't know if God healed me because of science or your prayers. But I know this. My heart stood up before my legs did. She smiled through tears. Then walk into the truth this time. Weeks later, he did, literally. Each physiotherapy session became a victory. Each step is a sermon. On the day he walked unaided, staff gathered around, clapping. He reached for Amara's hand. The first time I faked paralysis, I lied to see your love. The second time, I truly couldn't walk, and your love healed me. She cried openly, hugging him. The same corridor that once echoed their tragedy now witnessed their miracle. But not every wound healed quietly. Colonel, the mastermind behind the test, couldn't stomach Tobi's redemption. He leaked distorted clips online, claiming the confession was staged. But truth had legs now, and his lies limped. Journalists investigated. Police followed the money trail. The forged medical files traced back to Colonel's laptop. Worse, they uncovered that he'd been siphoning funds from Tobi system for months. When the arrest came, it was poetic. The same sirens Tobi once faked blared for real outside Colonel's apartment. At the station, Tobi visited him one last time. Colonel's swagger was gone. Big cousin, don't let them jail me. I just wanted to help you see the truth. Tobi stared through the bars. You helped me, Colonel, but not the way you think. You taught me that some people test love because they can't face themselves. I face mine. As he walked away, Colonel called out, You think she'll stay forever? Tobi turned slightly. She doesn't have to. She already did more than anyone ever would. Outside, reporters swarmed. One shouted, Mr. Adewale, what do you have to say about your cousin's arrest? He smiled calmly. Grace runs faster than gossip. Back at the hospital, Amara handed him discharge papers. You're free to go, she said softly. He looked up. Am I free in your heart too? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Freedom isn't earned in a day, but you're walking toward it. He exhaled, nodded, and walked out, slow, steady, reborn. Rain began to fall again outside, soft and forgiving. The same sky that had once been punished now blessed. The day discharge papers came, Lagos seemed to shine extra bright, like the heavens had scrubbed the city clean just for him. Sunlight spilled across the hospital corridor, bouncing off polished tiles, casting halos over white coats. Tobi stood at the threshold of the ward, leaning on a cane the physiotherapist had forced him to accept. Every muscle ached, but the pain felt sacred, like proof of resurrection. Amara walked beside him, professional mask in place. Slowly, she cautioned, "No heroics." He chuckled. "Too late. I've already met the hero. You." She looked away, hiding the small smile that betrayed her calm exterior. Outside, the taxi idled. Before climbing in, he stopped. "Can we visit the chapel?" Minutes later, they stood before the wooden altar where countless prayers had floated upward. He inhaled deeply. "Amara, I ruined everything beautiful we had. I made love a laboratory experiment." His voice trembled. "But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life studying only you, the right way this time." Her eyes filled, but she shook her head slightly. "Apologies don't rebuild houses, Toby. Work does, one brick at a time." He knelt. "Then I'll lay every brick myself." That evening, he returned to the Banana Island mansion. The gates that once screamed opulence now whispered emptiness. He walked through echoing halls where laughter had died months ago. Pictures of their vacations, anniversary dinners, smiling portraits. He took them down, one by one. When Amara visited the next day, she found him stacking the frames on the floor. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Making space for something true," he said. Together they rehung only one image, their wedding picture. She stared at it for a long time. "We look naive," she murmured. "Or hopeful," he offered. That night, as thunder cracked beyond the lagoon, they sat on the floor eating Amala from one plate. No fine china, no social media filters, just the sound of spoons, soft laughter, and rain tapping forgiveness against the windows. Renewal didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with humility. Word of his confession continued to ripple. Emails came daily, men apologizing to wives, women forgiving partners, strangers sharing stories of mistrust healed. Amara began replying to some messages, offering gentle counsel. One morning, as they sifted through testimonies, she said, "People are drowning in suspicion. We should do something practical, therapy, education, something." Toby nodded slowly. "Let's build a bridge. Not a company, a cause." That was how the Faith Project was born. They rented a modest office in Sur-Euler, peeling paint, flickering light bulb, and hope thick in the air. Amara designed programs, free counseling for couples, workshops on communication, small grants for families torn apart by lies. Toby funded the bills quietly, refusing to make it another PR stunt. Their first outreach drew a crowd so large the chairs ran out. A middle-aged mechanic cried as he admitted installing a tracker in his wife's phone. A young woman sobbed while confessing to faking screenshots to test a fiancé. Amara listened without judgment, her calm presence transforming guilt into courage. Later, as volunteers packed up, she told Toby, "See, people don't need miracles. They need honesty with witnesses." He smiled, "And you become that witness." Within months, the Faith Project gained traction. Radio shows invited them, churches recommended them, and clips of their seminars flooded TikTok under the tag #TestTrustNotLove. Yet despite the growing fame, Amara kept the focus clear. We're not saints. We're survivors helping others survive. One evening, she walked into his office to find him drafting a proposal titled Rebuilding Broken Homes Through Truth. She read over his shoulder and whispered, This is our second vow." 3 months later, Toby was invited to deliver the keynote at the Lagos Business and Family Wellness Conference. The hall brimmed with CEOs, influencers, pastors, therapists, the elite curious to witness the fallen man who had turned confession into culture. Cameras glimmered like stars. He stepped onto the stage, cane forgotten, posture steady. "Good morning," he began, voice low but clear. "My name is Tobi Adewale. I once built systems that tracked trucks across continents, but I couldn't track the fear inside my own chest." The audience hushed. "I tested my wife's love because I didn't trust my own worth. I turned our marriage into a crime scene, and she became both victim and healer. When I finally broke, she stayed to help me walk again. That's grace." Gasps rippled. Some wept openly. Amara watched from the front row, hands clasped. He continued, "So, here's what I learned. Men, power won't protect you from insecurity. Women, patience doesn't mean silence. Love isn't proof of perfection. It's proof of forgiveness. If you must test anything, test your ego. He paused, let the words breathe, then drew a small card from his pocket. We live by 4 rules now. Keycap 1, tell the truth early. Keycap 2, assume care, not contempt. Keycap 3, repair before you perform. Keycap 4, choose curiosity over control. When he finished, the hall erupted, a thunderclap of applause that carried through live streams across the country. That night, the hashtags #FaithProject, #TruthOverTest, and #the Adewale speech trended for days. Amara joined him on stage afterward. You finally used your voice for something good, she said softly. He smiled. No, we did. Their foundation began receiving letters faster than they could answer them. One evening, a case landed on Amara's desk that made her pause, a man named Musa Abdullahi begging for help. He had installed cameras to spy on his wife, convinced she was cheating. The woman, Kimi, now refused to speak to him. I'm losing her, he wrote. Please tell me how to fix what I broke. The resemblance to their past was uncanny. They invited the couple to Lagos. In the counseling room, tension sat like a third participant. Kimi's eyes were rimmed red. Musa's shoulders sagged with shame. Tobi began gently. Musa, what scared you most? Being made a fool, he muttered. Amara leaned forward. And now? He swallowed hard. Being alone. Kimi spoke then, voice trembling. He watched me cook, sleep, cry, all on screen. I became a suspect in my own home. Amara nodded slowly. That's exactly how betrayal feels, like being erased. Silence. Then Tobi said, You can rebuild if you're both willing to tell the truth without weaponizing it. We did. He handed them the full commitments card. Over the next month, they guided the couple through therapy, small rituals, and rediscovered laughter. When Musa finally deleted all the spyware and wrote a handwritten apology, Amara smiled. That's the first brick. Weeks later, Kimi arrived with news. She was pregnant. Twins. Everyone in the office cheered. Tobi whispered, full circle. That evening, he and Amara walked home under the neon glow of Lekki. We just saved another marriage, he said. She squeezed his hand. Maybe the test wasn't pointless after all. It just had the wrong subject. A year later, the same hospital that once broke and healed them invited the Adewale for its anniversary gala. The hall smelled of fresh paint and celebration. Nurses greeted them like celebrities. Lovebirds, one teased. Una movies still day play for internet. They laughed, posed for selfies, then slipped away to the quiet chapel. The candlelight painted soft halos on their faces. Amara opened the guest book and wrote, Grace gave us another try. Tobi added beneath, Truth kept it. Outside, Lagos glimmered. They strolled through the courtyard where night-blooming flowers perfumed the air. Do you realize, she said, that everything started and ended here, a hospital, a classroom for souls? He nodded, and I graduated last. She chuckled, leaned her head on his shoulder. But you passed. Back home, they found the living room transformed. Volunteers had left framed photos from the Faith Project's milestones, smiling families, reconciled couples, children named after hope. On the wall hung their favorite quote, Don't test loyalty, cherish it. As night deepened, power blinked off. Instead of panic, Tobi lit candles. They ate pepper soup from one bowl, barefoot on marble floors. Outside, rain began, gentle, cleansing. He turned the Bluetooth speaker on. Lagbaja's sax filled the air. Dance with me, he said. Amara laughed. You still step on toes. Then teach me again. They swayed slowly, the candlelight flickering against their brown skin, the rain tapping rhythm on the roof like applause from heaven. In that moment, the world was reduced to 2 pulses beating in sync. When the song ended, she whispered, What now? He kissed her forehead. Now we keep walking, one step after truth, one step after love. Narration fades as Lagos lights blur behind raindrops and the closing line rolls across the screen. If fear tells you to test love, test your fear instead. Because love isn't a riddle to solve, it's a life to share. And the heart that forgives becomes a home that endures. The end.